Even in their final moments, the world's most beloved stars revealed truths about love, loss, courage, and humanity.
Just tired of it.
You're tired of the whole thing.
I'm tired of defending my character everywhere I go.
These 10 last words from famous actors carry echoes that outlive the legends themselves. Chadwick Boseman, colon cancer. The world stopped when the news of Chadwick Boseman's death broke in 2020. The actor had continued to work through pain, never revealing the battle that was slowly consuming him. His final words, "God, let your will be done," revealed the depth of his faith and his quiet surrender to something greater than fame. Boseman's passing at just 43 was not simply the loss of a beloved actor, but the fall of a modern icon who gave strength to millions. His life had been guided by purpose rather than applause, and his final moments reflected that same humility. In his silence about his illness, he gave the world one last performance of courage, and his death taught the power of grace under suffering and the beauty of dignity even in the face of decline. Patrick Swayze, pancreatic cancer. Patrick Swayze's passing in 2009 was heartbreak for fans who had fallen in love with his warmth, charisma, and resilience. Known for his roles in Dirty Dancing and Ghost, he embodied both strength and sensitivity in a way few could match. His battle with pancreatic cancer lasted less than 2 years, yet his spirit never faltered. In his final moments, surrounded by his wife, he spoke words filled with serenity. "I'm not afraid to die. I'm going home." It was the closing line of a life lived with passion and grace. Swayze's courage in facing his illness mirrored the same fearlessness he brought to every performance. Even as his body weakened, he continued to work, determined to live as fully as he could. His death at 57 left a void in Hollywood, but his memory remains wrapped in the tenderness of his final declaration. Cloris Leachman, stroke and COVID-19. Cloris Leachman's departure in 2021 marked the loss of one of Hollywood's most fearless performers. She was 94 and had spent more than 7 decades breaking molds and redefining what women could do on screen. Her passing from a stroke, with COVID-19 as a contributing factor, came during a time when the world itself was grieving deeply. Yet her spirit remained undiminished even at the end. Leachman was known for her audacity, her wit, and her refusal to ever settle for ordinary. Her final words were 2 simple words: "Remember me." They seemed to challenge the world to never forget the woman who turned eccentricity into art. Her ashes were scattered quietly, but her influence still dances across generations of actors who admired her range and bravery. Leachman's death was not an end, but a punctuation mark in a life that constantly redefined comedy, drama, and everything in between. She left behind laughter that still rings and a reminder that being unforgettable is the truest legacy of all. Jim Henson, toxic shock syndrome. Jim Henson's death in 1990 was a shock that rippled through generations. The creator of the Muppets had spent his life building worlds of joy, laughter, and gentle wisdom. His passing from toxic shock syndrome came swiftly and unexpectedly, taking him from the world at just 53. In his final hours, he communicated with his family and friends in gestures more powerful than words. A wave, a smile, a quiet plea. "Please watch out for each other." Those were the last words of a man who had spent his entire life teaching kindness through puppets that spoke for the child in everyone. Even as illness consumed him, his thoughts remained on others, on love, on care. His death reminded people that compassion is not a character trait, but a way of living. The man who had once given voice to Kermit left the world one final lesson in empathy. In every story of friendship, Henson's message continues. His legacy remains one of light, reminding us that joy shared with others is the only kind that lasts forever. Dana Plato, drug overdose. Dana Plato's story was one of light dimmed too soon. Rising to fame as a child star in different strokes, she once embodied the promise of youth and stardom. But fame, when met with loneliness, can become a burden too heavy to carry. Her life unraveled in the years after her early success, marked by struggles with addiction and hardship. In 1999, at just 34, she died of a drug overdose that was later ruled a suicide. Her final words, "I'm just tired," were a haunting confession of exhaustion that ran deeper than physical fatigue. Plato's story remains a painful reminder of how easily young stars can be consumed by the pressures that once lifted them. In the end, her weariness spoke for countless others lost to similar fates. Her voice may have faded, but her tragedy still whispers a warning across time. Dudley Moore, pneumonia. The world lost more than a comedian when Dudley Moore passed in 2002. It lost a soul whose laughter was music in motion. The British actor and musician had spent his final years battling a rare neurological disorder that robbed him of mobility, but never of his humour or warmth. When pneumonia finally claimed him at 66, it was as though the melody of his life gently faded into silence. His last words, "I can hear the music all around me," carried poetic beauty. It was as if he had transcended pain and returned to the rhythm that had always guided him. Music had been his refuge, his passion, and his companion. Those who were with him in his final moments felt that he was at peace, surrounded by an invisible orchestra of memory and love. Moore's death was the quiet finale of a man whose laughter had once filled theatres and hearts alike. Even now, his words remind us that music never truly stops. It only changes form. He left behind a legacy of joy, a melody of kindness, and a reminder that laughter is its own kind of symphony. Ethel Barrymore, cardiovascular disease. Ethel Barrymore's name carried a weight of history, a symbol of old Hollywood's grandeur and grace. Born into the most famous acting dynasty of her time, she embodied poise and power on stage and screen. By the time she passed in 1959, she had lived through both the rise and transformation of the entertainment world. Her death from cardiovascular disease came quietly, with her housekeeper at her side. In her final moments, she asked whether everyone was happy, then added softly, "I want everybody to be happy. I know I'm happy." It was a farewell bathed in peace and contentment. Barrymore had always cared deeply about people, about connection, about the shared emotions that make art meaningful. Even as her heart slowed, her final concern was for others. Her last words revealed the serene acceptance of a woman who had seen life in all its forms and found joy in its fullness. To her admirers, she was not merely a great actress, but a figure of empathy and elegance. Her death marked the gentle closing of an era, leaving behind a lesson that happiness, once found, can outshine even the shadow of death. Alain Delon, B-cell lymphoma. When French cinema legend Alain Delon left the world in 2024, it felt as though an entire chapter of European film history closed with him. He was 88, a man whose striking looks and complex characters had defined French elegance and emotional restraint for decades. In his final years, Delon lived quietly in his countryside home in northern France, surrounded by family and a few trusted friends. Having faced a stroke years earlier and later the harsh battle with B-cell lymphoma, he faced mortality with these last words, "I will leave this world without feeling sad." And indeed, those who knew him spoke of peace in his final hours, not fear. His demise had only the gentle departure of a man who had long accepted life's fragility. His passing carried the weight of an artist who had lived fully and left nothing unresolved. Even in death, Delon remained a symbol of composure and grace, a man who walked away from the stage of life with the same poise with which he had entered it. Quincy Jones, pancreatic cancer. The passing of Quincy Jones in 2024 was the end of an era for music and culture. At 91, he had seen and shaped nearly a century of sound, from jazz to pop to the global pulse of rhythm and soul. His home in Los Angeles became a quiet sanctuary in his final days, filled with the hum of love and memory. The people who had shared in his brilliance gathered around him, not in grief, but in gratitude for a man who had done so much to bridge worlds. When he uttered his last words, "I love you eternally," it was less a goodbye than a promise that his spirit would never fade. It was a fitting farewell from someone who had spent his life amplifying harmony across cultures and generations. Though pancreatic cancer dimmed his light, it could not silence the melody he left behind. Quincy Jones's death reminded the world that greatness, when anchored in love, never truly ends. No doubt, his music and his legacy continue to play on like a timeless refrain. Edmund Gwenn, pneumonia. When Edmund Gwenn passed away in 1959, Hollywood lost one of its most beloved character actors. Known for his timeless portrayal of Kris Kringle in Miracle on 34th Street, Gwenn embodied warmth, humour, and sincerity in every role. His final years were marked by illness following a stroke, and pneumonia ultimately claimed his life just before his 82nd birthday. Yet even as he faced the end, his sharp wit never left him. When a friend remarked that dying must be hard, Gwenn smiled faintly and replied, "Dying is easy. Comedy is hard." It was a perfect final line for a man whose craft was built on timing and truth. His humour in that moment captured a lifetime of perspective, showing that even in pain, he could find laughter. Gwenn's passing marked the close of a generation of performers who found grace in simplicity. His last words continue to be quoted by comedians and actors as both a joke and a profound truth about the human condition. Through his humour, he reminded us that art and life are both performances, and it is courage, not perfection, that earns the final applause. That's all for today's video. Which last words do you think should have made the list? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.